topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
And welcome to Triversity Talk. It's Wednesday, 7 o'clock, and thank you for being with me here on Triversity Talk. You could be anywhere, but if you're watching this broadcast, you're here with me. Well, what an evening it's been, I have to tell you. As you all know, I sent out a lot of promotion for a game show called Rainbow Quest and its creator, Brian Kaufman. But with the weather being what it is these days, Brian is stranded in the Jersey Shore with no power. So to make a long story very short, I reached out to one of the most fabulous people I know in New York. And I said, I want you on the show tonight. First of all, he is a historian in his own right. He's an urban photojournalist. He is also the archivist of the Jackie Curtis photography, memoirs, and I can't think of a more exciting person to introduce you to tonight than the one, the only Joey Preston.
Hey.
You're there.
Hi, Wendy.
Isn't it great? It's magic when it works, Joe, isn't it?
Oh, amazing. Thank Juan 100%.
Right. And Juan, our incredible producer, we really were scrambling. Joe's computer wasn't acting up the way it should. And we're doing his phone, my computer. You don't need to know all those gory details, but I got to tell you, people have no idea what goes into streaming. And streaming, as you all know, is what's happening. The way of the future, the way of the present, and sometimes it's got its challenges. But
right.
Determination will prevail.
Absolutely.
Joe, thank you for being here with us tonight. And you are, to me, the quintessential New Yorker. And you are. I mean, you stories of your family. You know, so many of us came here. Well, I came from the Bronx. It doesn't count. The Bronx migration. So many people in New York that have become part of his history came here 40 years ago from the Midwest or the South. You know, everybody comes here because, well, like Madonna said, it happens in New York. We always say it can happen here. It can happen anywhere. You came from a New York legacy family. Could we start just talking a little bit about your family?
Well, my great-grandmother came here in 1904.
Wow.
And she landed in Manhattan, basically in a couple of different neighborhoods on the Lower East Side, predominantly.
Which is where all the immigrants came when they came.
Absolutely. And there was also an Italian section up in Harlem in the teens, 100 teens. So she lived on 118th Street for a while. But then my grandmother brought her back down to the East Village, which was still really part of the Lower East Side at that point, because it's below 14th Street.
Right. And you know what they say, anyone in the East Village, if they go above 14th Street, they get a nosebleed. But
yes. That's our standard line, yes.
So your family came here really the early 1900s, and you know, there they were in the East Village. Now your grandmother, her first business, it was a bar.
Well, her first business was actually a luncheonette counter. And she opened that up just west of 2nd Avenue on 12th Street, on East 12th Street.
Wow.
And then one of her cousins had the bar across the street. And he said to her, Annie, do you want to buy the bar? So my mother was with my grandmother at that time, and they stood in front of it. And my grandmother said to my mother, she said, should I buy it? And my mother said, of course, absolutely. And that started the role. You know, my grandmother's name was Slugger Ann before that.
Slugger Ann. Her name was Ann, but she was Slugger Ann. What did she do to get that name?
Well, she was a taxi dancer, and a taxi dancer lines up in a club, and men buy tickets to dance with the women of their choice. So sometimes the men got out of hand, and they put their hands where they shouldn't. And wham, my grandmother was all but about 5'2", but they all wore those chunky heels in the 1940s and 50s.
So because I want to add that the taxi dancer thing is completely fascinating, because I have to tell you, most people don't even know about it. But I'm thinking, while we're talking, you remember that song 10 Cents a Dance?
Yes, of course.
On the taxi dancers?
Right.
Oh, wow.
Well, our generation, I would say, would understand it more of Tina Turner's song, Private Dancer. I'm your private dancer, dancer for money. Do what you want me to do. You see? So that's...
I never thought of it that way. I always took that song, right? Because I'm of this time as a lap dancer. But it's not.
Well, what went on behind the scenes is, never spoken about, really. But, what Tina Turner sings about is, I keep my mind on the money and my eyes on the wall, you see.
Wow. Right.
So there were so many men coming in, and that's where she actually met my father. My mother, because my mother and my aunt, who happens to be Jackie Curtis's mother, also worked as taxi dancers.
So the whole family, I want the whole scenario. The whole family was part of this bar. And I think you've told me this story so many times, but I'm really listening tonight, and I'm thinking about what dynamic females you come from. Seriously, these were like the business women, independent, self-employed of the time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Sicilian women are very tough, and they're usually the head of the household.
Right.
So she was business minded, and she had to support the family. There was no two ways about it, and the family helped with the business also.
Of course, because you're Italian, and you're Italian.
Yes, absolutely. I would be a waiter at the tables. My mother would be behind the bar. My aunt would be behind the bar. Curtis would be behind the bar serving drinks also. I call him Curtis. Everybody else knows him as Jackie. But in the family, we called him Curtis.
And for those of you listening, because this show is broadcast nationwide, Jackie Curtis is, of course, from the whole Warhol family, and a very famous personality. And Joe will be talking more about that later, and we have incredible pictures to show. Okay, so the whole family was at this bar.
Yes, absolutely. We all contributed what we could. I basically grew up in the bar because I went to grade school across the street from the bar.
Wow.
And I would go there before my mother came home and do my homework. So, I saw all the characters coming in and out. And as I got a little older, they were, more and more characters in and out,
I have a question for you about New York at that time. And I guess as you started to get a little older, were you aware of who was gay and who wasn't that would come in the bar? What was it like then?
Well, in the 60s, she basically had a very straight clientele. and I would say a neighborhood clientele.
Okay.
It was not gay oriented whatsoever.
Interesting.
The East Village itself in the 60s and 70s was not gay oriented. It
It's
was
where you
very,
went to raise a family. Wow.
very family oriented. And
Wow.
you knew people from block to block. You were a clique on your own block.
Of course.
It was, how can I say, very cliquish.
Right.
We stayed on our own block. We hung out with our own neighbors. Everybody knew each other's business.
Yeah, exactly. Do
Right?
you think some of that had to do, everybody was Italian in the neighborhood then, right?
Well, no,
Ah,
not at all. Not at all. There was a heavy Puerto Rican community in the neighborhood, but also mixed with the Italians from the old world still, from
yeah.
the first half of the 20th century.
Wow.
Um,
Who only
but
spoke
there,
Italian, I'm sure.
who?
They only spoke Italian.
Some of them did. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. My mother spoke Italian, my grandmother spoke Italian, but they never taught me. So I didn't know Italian at all. But we also had Slavic in the neighborhood. We had, a big concentration of Slavic Eastern Europeans as well, you see.
That's why they
So,
call New York. New York was a big melting pot at the time. And, from my knowledge of it, so many different nationalities all lived in what we call the tenement buildings. Now we call them low rises, but
right,
I remember my
right.
grandfather, right? My grandfather calling my mother, even my mother, referring to the area, the tenements in that area. So,
Yeah, and a lot of them had the bathrooms in the hallway.
bathroom and hallway.
Um, and a lot of them were cold water flats, which were less expensive also at the time. I knew a family that was kicked out of where Stuyvesant Town is now when they were building it in the 1940s. And they went to 172nd Avenue and looked at an apartment, but it was $33 a month, and they couldn't afford it. So
Unaffordable.
they came down a couple of blocks toward Fourth Avenue and became our neighbors, where the rent was $18.
$18 a month, don't we wish?
Yeah. So, those were the times, but there were a lot of Ukrainians, a lot of Jewish people, a lot of Polish as well.
Yeah,
Um,
we still have evidence of the restaurants there. I know we have a wonderful between 12th and 13th still a wonderful Polish restaurant there.
yeah, it's called Little Poland.
Little Polish, yeah.
Yeah, on Second Avenue.
Oh boy,
Uh,
can they make the stuffed cabbage there? I gotta tell you.
Oy.
Oh, like yeah, like it melts in your mouth, your lips.
Then we
So,
have the Sulka on 9th Street also,
yeah, Veselka is, of course, really famous. Everyone knows it. So, Joe, Jackie was your cousin, right? And you're both working in the bar. So, Jackie at that time was how old?
Well, Curtis was 12 years older than me.
Right. So, okay,
So,
or already, young.
yeah, I came in at the end, the very, very end.
Right.
But we were 12 years apart, but we were on the same level.
Right.
We can speak to one another and have civil conversations and
Civil
intelligent conversations, One
Joe,
day,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to ask you like what Curtis was like then, because Curtis became, of course, so unbelievably bigger than life, flamboyant, right? Amazing performer. What was Curtis like at 21 or 22 working in the bar with you?
Well, he was like Melissa Tentrees, for instance. He had multiple personalities for what he was doing and where he was at the time. When he was doing theater and on stage, or living in drag for the 5 years that he lived in drag from 70 to 75, 69 to 75 or so, he that was a persona, a theatrical persona. But when you met him otherwise, and he was not in drag, he was a very low key intellectual, and you can speak to him on a very normal basis and wouldn't know that was Jackie Curtis sitting across the table from you.
What you're telling us, what you're sharing is really quite interesting, even for me. And you and I have had many conversations about Jackie Curtis and the work that was created, but the low-key persona, that is a true chameleon, by the way, what you're presenting right now, someone that can transform, because a lot of the people, even that we know now that do drag, they're a different person when they're out of drag, but most of them that I know, certainly wouldn't call them low key, nothing about
Right.
them. They have that big personality, which allows them to do drag. Jackie, though, I mean, wow.
Well, there was also another Jackie, I would say, maybe alcoholic Jackie at one point.
Part of the personality.
Another personality, or drug Jackie.
Right.
It's dependent on the mood of the day, on what he was doing that particular time, whether he was narrow, thin in his body, or he gained a lot of weight.
I don't even know that Jackie. The Jackie that I've seen is of the body of a model.
Yes, he actually does have the body of a model. When he was doing drag, and not eating. But the biggest misconception about I still call him Curtis. I'm sorry. The biggest misconception about Curtis was the fact that he always had a place to live, and he always had food to eat. Right. So this bohemian lifestyle of being in the theater and actually pretending that, my mother kicked him out of the house, or my grandmother kicked him out of the house, that was basically part of the theatrical Jackie.
The struggling artist persona.
Right, correct. Wow. But he always had food. He had money, a little money to spend here and there. But he was basically, not about money. He was about his craft. Right. He was about his art, and he was about theater. He was a brilliant playwright. He wrote about a dozen plays, mostly put on at La Mama or Bastiano's. And he gave Robert De Niro his first part.
Wow.
Yeah. Robert De Niro used to live in the neighborhood, and his family had a printing store. But he was looking to get into acting and theater, and he heard about Glamour, Glory, and Gold coming about. And the whole story is he ran over to Curtis, and Holly and Candy were all there, and he was begging to be in the show. And they said, "Are you sure you could do all 10 parts?" And he said, "Absolutely." He did them so well, but that was his first acting job, acting on stage.
And he did, all 10 parts, which I know, of course, the script from Glamour, Glory, and Gold, having participated in that reading with you, the language was incredibly complicated. Honest to God, if I had to learn any of those parts, I would need months to it.
Right.
And I'm talking one part. De Niro was able to learn 10 parts. That's amazing.
Yes, the 10 parts were basically the husbands of Nola Noonan, who was the up-and-coming star.
Right.
And she meets a bunch of clowns along the way. So he would run backstage, change his clothes real fast, and run back out and be somebody else, you see, and have like a 2 or 3 minute scene, run back out and come back on stage and be somebody else, you see. So yeah, that he got his first start with Jackie's show.
I'm glad we're having this conversation about Jackie Curtis, because what you're unveiling is things that many people don't know. And if I were to interview De Niro and said, "How did you get your start?" I wonder if he would come clean and tell me that.
I don't know. I don't know because I've looked up so many things on the internet
Yeah.
and it doesn't exist. But there is a book on De Niro that somebody wrote, and an a biography that explains it in a whole page and a half. So yeah, Curtis knew everybody in theater, and everybody knew him. It was the downtown underground of New York.
Yes.
David Bowie, Bette Midler,
Oh, yeah.
everybody. Bette Midler actually had him fired from one of his early shows.
Out.
Yes. It was a Tom Iron production called Miss Nefertiti Regrets. And she was in the show, and somehow she had Curtis fired, and he was very young. He was like 16 years old.
16 in the show. Wow.
He was kind of hurt from that, but he never spoke bad about her ever. Curtis never spoke bad about anybody ever. So,
but he was already at 16. Would you say a seasoned actor? I mean,
he was beyond brilliant. That was the whole point. Right. He was alone within himself. He had the family, but outside of my mother, quite frankly, I was too young to understand what he was going through. But outside of my mother, because she was in show business, understood him. He didn't have too many people in the family to relate to. You see, Curtis's mother was very, how can I say, provincial.
Okay.
In her personality. So, they didn't get along at all. They had a big fight.
Had this incredible kid with more layers than you could peel off of an onion, and she didn't know what to do with them. I mean,
she and my grandmother tried to get Curtis into the mainstream media. And it wasn't Curtis's desire whatsoever. He did it for a few years, but it really didn't work for him. And then he met Candy Darling and Holly Woodlawn, and they told him to dress in drag. And when he dressed in drag, that's when he met Warhol, you see,
right
in the Village, in the West Village.
Wow, that's the how-to of how it all happened. So he started at that point, I guess, working with Warhol.
Curtis met Warhol on Greenwich Avenue, and Warhol said to him, "What's in your shopping bag?" And he says, "Oh, the posters for my new play. You have to come see it, Vain Victory," right? So he gave him a flyer, and Warhol came to see it. And that's basically what started everything. So, but even before Vain Victory, Curtis wrote Glamour, Glory, and Gold. And that was done in 67 and 68 with De Niro, you see. So Curtis was very, very well known and very popular.
Right. And he didn't need Warhol. He absolutely didn't need Warhol. Warhol needed Jackie Curtis, actually.
Yes. Warhol latched on to the drag queen scene with Candy Darling and Holly Woodlawn and unusual people who were in the circuit of Union Square when he came down and rented his studio there, his factory there, you see. So they would all hang out, just as we hang out at Pangea all the time.
Right.
They come and go, and got involved in Warhol's films. And Warhol would pay them very, very little money, but there was also drugs flying around all over the place. So, it was a clique. It was a group.
Right. But it was also a very creative clique at the time.
Yes. Some brilliant people came out of the factory. Lou Reed, for instance.
Well, Lou Reed wrote "Take a Walk on the Wild Side." There was a stanza about Jackie in there, right?
There's a stanza about Jackie, Candy, Holly, and others. Sugar
Do you
Plum
remember
Fairy.
I'm picking my brain. I remember flew into Miami, FLA, hitchhiked his way across the USA.
That was for Holly.
That was Holly, right?
Okay. Curtis's was Jackie is just speeding away. Thought she was James Dean for a day. Right. It's that verse.
Wow.
Jackie emulated James Dean so much that he went out to Hollywood to audition for the part to do the James Dean story.
How incredible that would have been.
Yes, and he was also very good friends with David Lohr and Lenny Prusak, who now own the James Dean Museum and Gallery in Fairmount, Indiana.
Those are two gentlemen in Fairmount, Indiana. Wow.
Right. Wow.
So, Joe, you have some pictures to show us.
Yes, let me see if I can get them right. Just let me know if you can see them.
Okay, Wendy's putting her glasses on for this. Okay, you're a little curled in the corner. Just get it really flat. Get it, right up to your okay, a little bit higher. Beautiful. Gorgeous. Just hold that still. That's beautiful. Andy Warhol's Women. What's happening in this picture, Joe?
What Curtis is doing is laying on the couch, and it's a scene from Women in Revolt.
Oh my God, that's wow.
Right. And in some posters it says Women in Revolt, and in others it just says Women, and Candy's on the poster.
Putting on my glasses to see Candy on the poster.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm good. Okay. That's really amazing.
So Women in Revolt was really one of Warhol's more popular films. So, and there was a lot of ad-libbing because there wasn't a script. They just said, Jackie knows what to say. He'll think of something, And,
of course. Brilliant like that. Of course, he would think of something on the spot. Absolutely.
Yes. Here's another shot from Women in Revolt.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, just hold it exactly the way you got it. Beautiful. So, how beautiful Jackie Curtis is. My God. Who is in the poster with Jackie Curtis?
One of the other actors. I really couldn't tell you because the only billing is with Jackie, Candy, and Holly.
Right.
Now, a few years ago, Scott Whitman, I think we all know who Scott Whitman is. He's a brilliant producer and composer on Broadway. And he used to do shows at La Mama and was connected with La Mama as being on the board of directors also. But he did a show about Jackie called Jukebox Jackie. And that was about 10 years ago. And let's see if I can hold that up.
Oh, the picture is amazing. That's great.
Right.
I mean, look at the attitude and the body language. And of course, I love this. Justin Vivian Bond was in it. I'm reading who's an incredible performer. Wow.
Yeah.
I love
Bridget Everett, who we all know. Bridget Everett.
Yeah.
She went on to have her own television show.
On now. On
and
Hulu.
she's constantly at Joe's Pub. She puts on shows at Joe's Pub. Phenomenal cast. It was a beautiful production. And I'm very, very proud of it. So, So.
I would imagine, Joe, doing what you're doing, you have to be very protective of how Jackie's work is used, So when somebody produces something like that and you tell us that you really, really thought it was great, It was really great.
Well, I'm the executor of Curtis's literary estate.
Yes.
Okay. So when people want to use whatever he wrote in his plays or poetry, they have to come through me. But things like Women in Revolt, I have nothing to do with.
Right.
The literary estate I am in charge of.
You're the keeper of the keys of the literary estate.
Yeah, well, you opened the can of worms with that one.
I did. I just need you to fix your speaker on your phone for a second.
Sorry?
Your phone speaker.
Yeah.
It went off for a minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What you did by saying that was opening up a can of worms on how this all happened. Curtis's stuff was all in the apartment when he died.
Okay.
And, I was basically, but not really basically, I was the only one who had to put everything into storage.
I can't imagine. That's so daunting. While we're talking, just take your hand off the phone microphone. It's uncovering the microphone on the phone.
Okay, how's that?
So we still are getting a different sound. Do you have your hand off of the microphone on the phone?
How's that?
Still, we can hear it. We'll just have to work with it. So, you were the person that was there when Curtis passed.
Yes. We had gotten the message quite rudely. A cop came up to our house and banged on the door and said, "Do you know a Jackie Curtis?" And we said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, can I use your phone?" And I said, "Yes, of course, come in." So he picked up the phone and he said, "Hello? Oh, he's dead? Thank you. Bye."
Oh my God, Joe, I can't, you had to be in shock.
My mother almost fainted. My mother was there. She wasn't well at the time. She was going through cancer. And I was standing there and I was ballistic. I was furious. Not only because of what happened, but the way the message was delivered to us. Because he hung up the phone, looked at me and smiled and said bye.
Did he even connect who you and your mother were?
Say it again.
Oh, good. Your microphone's working now. Whatever you did, we're back where we need to be.
Okay.
Did policemen connect who you and your mother were?
He really didn't get into that whatsoever. He just asked if we knew them.
Oh, that's so cold. This is such a cold story.
It really is. It really is because Curtis died of an overdose. So cops were not really sympathetic to people.
No. Yeah, if you were shooting drugs, they didn't care about you.
Yeah. And there were other people, there before me and all of this kind of thing who found out about it before us. And, this is what happened. But Curtis's father, put me in charge of everything. And I was like, okay, because I was the only one here.
Right.
So I just packed everything up and brought it over to Manhattan Mini Storage and went through it for the next 6 months.
So you have every piece of poetry, every play, amazing.
Everything that was in the apartment, except for the clothes. The clothes, I only have a few pieces left. They were soiled. Curtis used to take baths in the dresses. He used to spray the wigs with Raid.
Oh my God.
And you know why? Him and Holly were walking down 2nd Avenue one day, and Holly turns to Curtis and says, "Curtis, what's that smell?" He says, "It's Raid." He says, "Well, why is it Raid?" He says, "I spray my wigs with Raid." And Holly said, "Why?" He says, "Because there's a lot of roaches in New York. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone."
We can be onto something right here, right?
What?
Anyone who does drag should think about this. This is a little household tip from Joe Preston. Spray your boots with Raid. And they've improved the scent, so there may be something to it.
Maybe there's lemon scent now. I have no idea, but everybody used 2 cans of Aquanet back
Right,
then.
right, exactly. Oh my gosh. Now, you had the opportunity, didn't the LGBTQ Center on 13th Street do a retrospective on Jackie Curtis?
About 6 years ago, see, I had kept all of Curtis's memoirs, I would say, and memorabilia in storage and in my apartment for the last 30 years.
Yes.
But then I moved and I couldn't take everything with me. And I thought it was time to really find a place that I trusted.
Of course.
And that was really local. And it was just so wonderful because they had just renovated the space, the archival space at the LGBT Center.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
On West 13th Street, right? So I donated everything to the center that I had. And it, you have to make an appointment to go and you can see it. And
but that's great. What an honor to Jackie Curtis's legacy, really, Joe. I mean, a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that. When someone like that passes, if they don't have someone like you to protect really who they were.
Yeah. His father was from down south. And he says, Joey, I'm putting it into your hands. So I went to a lawyer, I got everything done. And, the expenses came out of my pocket as well.
Yeah.
I did what I had to do because my mother was very sick.
Right.
And my brother was not involved with us at all.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, well, everybody scattered, they didn't want to get involved for whatever reason.
It's an incredible, first of all, hearing these details, the policeman who was completely not horrible about you and your mother, and then being told by Jackie's biological father, here, you can have it, you can deal with it. You had a lot thrust on your shoulders at that time.
It was all so immediate. I couldn't begin to tell you.
Right.
I call it doing Curtis's last production.
Really?
Because the next morning, I was ordering the funeral with money that I didn't have, that nobody had yet. And I had to go also to the morgue to identify him.
Oh my God.
And, if you've ever been there, I don't know what they do now, but, can I say what they did?
Oh my God. You can say whatever you want on this show. This is incredible what you're sharing.
Well, they bring you into a room and they lifted a curtain. And I said, my goodness, how many curtains have been lifted through Curtis's lifetime, during his productions?
Oh,
so they lifted
what a metaphor.
I'm holding on to the railing and they're lifting the curtain. And as they're lifting the curtain, an angular slab with Curtis's body was being pushed up on an angle and pressed up against the other side of the glass. But because of the way Curtis died with the drugs in his system, he was over bloated.
Of course.
And I had to say, yes, that's Curtis. And the curtain came down and the slab went down flat again. But I'll tell you, ordering a funeral, identifying the body, all was a big whirlwind overnight.
Joe, how old were you? How old were you when this was going on?
26.
That is like, whoa. An awful lot of real life stuff really thrown at you within 24 hours.
Oh, absolutely. And then, I had to deal with my mother's
And
emotions.
then, right. Your mother's emotions, and you said your mother wasn't well at the time, so you had that going on.
Yeah, she wasn't well. And the issue is that my mother was more of a mother to him than his own mother. So I'm going to move away for a second because I have to plug in the phone as we're talking.
Oh, please. This is real life live stream. That's right. We plug in here. We do whatever we have to do to make the show go on.
Yeah, I'm in the living room, but I'm going to turn. I've got the pictures up there now. I didn't bring them with me when I just ran downstairs.
Okay, do you want to go get the pictures?
Yeah, let me get the pictures.
Okay.
Sing a song in the meantime.
It's fine, Joe. You go get the pictures. For those of you who are tuning in to this podcast, we're having an amazing conversation. Joe Preston is my guest tonight, and he is in charge of the literary portion of the estate of Jackie Curtis. For people that are saying, Jackie Curtis sounds familiar, you will all remember Jackie Curtis as part of the Warhol family. There was Candy Darling, Holly Woodlawn, and Jackie Curtis, and of course, as part of the whole Warhol era. And Joe, you're back with us.
I'm back. I had to run up to the penthouse part of the apartment.
In the archives. So you have some more pictures, right? Because we're on the last 5 minutes.
Oh, we are. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So quick. Oh, beautiful. Look at Jackie. Beautiful.
Okay, I'm going to hold up another one.
The last one that you just held up, Jackie, that was from what?
That was a studio shot of that Curtis and I together.
Got it. Okay,
back in 1980
with the blonde hair.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And this is when he was doing the life of Francis Farmer.
Get out! What an incredible talent.
Yes, the Francis Farmer the Francis Farmer story was called "I Died Yesterday." Here's another image.
Yeah, this Curtis. Is what I'm very familiar with. Curtis, a pinup. It's very pinup, this image.
Very pinup, yes.
That's amazing, Joe. Jackie Curtis channeled each character that he was. And this is right. I know we're using the word drag a lot, but this is well beyond drag. This is true performance art.
Yes. And I also want to just highlight to visit JackieCurtis.com. There's an entire website. And also try and rent or view Superstar in a House Dress, The Life and Legend of Jackie Curtis, of which Craig Heiberger was the producer. I was the associate producer. And let me see if I can just get a real quick image of the...
Yeah, whatever you need to do. Oh, there it is. There's a poster. Superstar in a House Dress, The Life and Legend of Jackie Curtis. A pioneer in 1960s.
60s and 70s. And into the 80s. But he became distant from Warhol at about 1975 or so. Okay. Right. And this one.
Oh, that's the artist. What's her name?
That's done by Alice Neal. That painting went for $1.7 million back in 2009.
Oh my gosh.
At Sotheby's. And it's the highest price paid for a drag queen in history.
Really?
Yes. And when Alice Neal's work tours all over the world, it just recently toured at the Metropolitan Museum, and everybody was ogling over this painting.
Right.
They just loved it. And actually, Alice did two of Curtis. One is a boy, one is a girl.
I
So,
think I remember that as well. Wow, what an incredible story. Joe, as we start to wrap everything up, what is next for you?
I wrote a book during the pandemic,
Tell us.
on my life with Curtis. It's a work in progress. I did feel I finished it, but it's a work in progress and things still keep coming to mind. So when I'm ready to publish it, I will do so and let you know.
Oh, absolutely. And when when it's published, I'll have you back on this show. And of course, on If These Walls Could Talk at Pangea. You're part of that
Fabulous.
whole legacy. And we got to talk about the book there. Thank you so much for tonight. I
Pleasure.
love what you're doing. And I am really blessed to have you in my life as well.
And the feeling's mutual. I'm blessed to have you, Alan, and Kyle in my life as well.
Thank you so much. You take care of yourself. Good night, everybody. Stay
Good night.
safe. Be
Bye.
well. Bye.
Bye-bye.